this series, I want to talk about purchasing pinball machines, bringing them home, and what to look out for prior to turning a game on. If you've ever been around any type of older electronics, if you watch TV shows like American Pickers or Pawn Stars, you'll see people just randomly plug in old electronics, and then usually they burn up or miraculously work. So for pinball machines, it's very similar. I will say this in very big block letters: never assume a machine is in working condition. So what we have here is a Paragon pinball machine, as you've seen in some of my other videos that I featured so far as a first look, and when I picked up this machine a while back. I want to take a little bit deeper dive in what I do before I ever power a machine on when I bring it home. So let's look at the top 5-6 things to do before doing so. The line cord is one of the most important things that you need to look at prior to plugging in a pinball machine. What you'll find is a variety of different things. You'll find the grounding plug completely missing, or you'll find nicks, scrapes, issues where they've put electrical tape around the wire cord. So you always want to take this cord and follow it back to its origin inside the pinball machine to make sure that it is not cut or any way compromised. So start there first, check that, and then we'll move on from there. Next up is the line filter. And more importantly, more than just a line filter, making sure that it's working correctly, but also the little red ceramic disc, which is the varisistor. The varisistor basically is, think of it as a one-time surge protection. I usually look for this to see if it's been blown in the past, and if it has, it kind of starts to put me in the right direction that there could be something else electronically or voltage incorrect. So it's important to look at this. If the varisistor is blown, the game will still work, but you're kind of riding a motorcycle without a helmet at that point. If something else were to happen, you may be in some issues and may end up frying your game further. So from the line filter, let's move on and up the chain into the pinball machine. From the line filter, we come up here into the transformer. Now, some pinball machines, including those later solid state machines, well, you may see the transformer actually down in the base of the cabinet, but the early state Bally's had the transformer up inside the back box. Now, in terms of transformers, they rarely, if ever, go bad. The only thing that you're really looking for at this point to check is making sure you don't see any hacked wiring, electrical tape, anything that looks out of the ordinary. Dirt, in this case, is okay. That can be cleaned, but from a transformer perspective, there's not really much to test. Now, I will tell you that by taking this cage off, you will see lugs that you can connect to. And if you follow or look online, you'll find all kinds of different voltages that will come out of these lugs. It is important, though, that there are model numbers for Bally transformers, and there may be slight variation of your lugs versus the voltages coming out of it. Now, those voltages can be AC or DC. So in this case, you have to be careful. Again, with this, the line filter, the line cord, we're dealing with 120 volts AC, things that are not pleasant to touch. So always be aware of that when doing any continuing checks. Right up above the transformer, our power goes into our rectifier board. Now, the rectifier board is a common failure point for a lot of these early Bally solid state machines. In this case, the rectifier board is found here in the back box. Later solid state machines, you'll find rectifier boards next to the transformer underneath the playfield. And then you'll start to see these boards get phased out in later solid state games. In fact, Williams, you'll find power supply boards up on the back box tin as well. But in this case, this is a very common failure point. And the reasons why, there's a multitude of reasons. One is quality of parts, the breakdown after so many years, the quality of traces. But you'll just find a lot of issues specifically with these rectifier boards. Now, in this case, my machine that I've got is no different than many machines you may see out there. A couple of things that I like to point out very quickly is you see that I have specific wires that have been soldered straight to the test points. So they've been circumventing something else in terms of trying to make this machine work. And what I'll do by picking up the camera and moving it a little bit closer is you'll see that we've got some of the connectors here that have been busted, broken, and even tarnished. So for example, this connector right here, I would probably want to switch this out. And if I'm going to do this one, I might as well just go ahead and do the ones that are also here as well. You can also see the differences here in the fuses. I have not checked these, but I'm looking for fuse clips that may be broken or really, really severely tarnished. I can also see that this resistor has had some sort of heat to it. Also not a great sign if you see something like that. So all in all, my next step in terms of resolving this board is going to be taking this board out and either refurbishing it or replacing it. You can find high quality replacement rectifier boards, and usually nowadays I will say that due to the price, it's probably just best to replace. So I want to take mine out first, take a look at it before making that distinction. From the rectifier board, we'll then start to make our way into the main boards of our Bally solid state unit. You'll have, in this case, our solenoid and driver board up here. Your MPU board, which is right here with the battery still on it, which I'll explain in a minute. Your auxiliary lamp driver board that is conveniently hidden behind all the cables. And then your sound board right here. Now you'll find a lot of different models of all these boards depending on the game that you buy. But it's important to note that there's a lot of tests that you can run prior to plugging all these boards in. And one of the key things that you want to always understand is that when you have power, which is coming from the rectifier board over here, that power is getting sent through the harness to each of these individual boards. So it's important to note that if you want to confirm and make sure that you're getting the appropriate amount of power at certain areas, you want to go ahead and test the power coming from the rectifier board through the pins, and then making sure that they're flowing to the boards appropriately, and then even testing the connectors before plugging them into the board. Very important thing to do. For example, the MPU board up here in the top right, this board runs on 5 volts of power. So for example, if we end up sending it because of misconfiguration or an operator hack, we send it 188 volts DC, that board will not survive and you'll need a replacement. So it's very important that you make sure that when you're looking at your connectors and making sure that you're putting the right connector in the right place, you also want to make sure that the voltages are going to be are going to be correct as well. The other key piece of information is that when you go to test these individual boards, you can actually turn the pinball machine on and allow to test the voltages before ever hooking these boards up. Now, what will happen is that the pinball machine will not be playable, but you'll be able to test it all prior to that point. Now, your next question may be, well, Adam, I don't know where the voltages are coming in at. I don't know which, I don't know, do they come in here, there, what cord? There's a lot of cords or wires. What do I do? So that's where you grab your schematic, and you want to be able to follow the schematic with from the rectifier off to the boards, and then be able to measure the appropriate voltages as we go. So in the case here, as we follow along and fixing this Bally Paragon and firing up for the first time, my next step is going over to this rectifier board, taking this rectifier board off and going through it. So let's move on to that step, and then we'll go forward from there. So I've taken the rectifier board with the transformer, with the housing, out of the pinball machine, out of the Bally, the Paragon. And when I'm starting to look at the rectifier board, you can see that this thing's had some major rework. Looks like some diodes have been replaced here. These connectors are all burned out. Looks like there's been some damage here. That's really some poor soldering ability all the way up this board. So just by looking at this board, let me just turn it over real quick and take a look. not terrible. I mean, it's just someone's reworked this board to death. So right now, I'm really starting to think, should I try to rebuild this board or just let it go? I'm going to probably just let it go. Hashtag Elsa. Just because I don't know if it's really worth saving. Again, you can pick up these boards that they're relatively cheap, especially if you have the build your own. So I'm going to take a look at that online and maybe grab one of those and come back and rebuild this whole thing. So let me go upstairs, do some research,